to feel the love present. It's my deepest honor to share with you. That as we just spent time together in silent meditation, I imagine that each one of us experienced something a little different. Perhaps some of us found peace. Some of us might have noticed restless thoughts. And some may have felt gratitude or grief. Or maybe just wondered what we were having for our potluck lunch. Exciting. But I wonder if silence itself isn't the destination. I wonder if silence simply reveals something that has been present all along. But what if nothing actually is missing? I think the deepest message was in the sound bath last night, in the sound and the music. But I'm going to do my best to translate it into words. What if the love that we're seeking, the peace that we're seeking, the guidance that we're seeking has never been absent? What if our spiritual journey isn't about finding God, but remembering what has never been lost? That today I'd like to explore something that I call the music beneath the noise. That during meditation, have you ever noticed that awareness itself is perfectly still while thoughts continue moving? So which one is the real you? One of the greatest paradoxes of the spiritual journey is that we spend years searching for what has never actually been lost. Every tradition, every teacher, every sacred text has offered different maps. But I sometimes wonder whether every authentic path has ultimately been pointing to exactly the same place. Not outward, not upward, but inward. Toward the place where love has been quietly waiting for our awareness. We just forget how to listen beneath the noise. Not just the noise around us, but the noise within us. The constant thinking, the worrying, the planning, the comparing, the stories that we tell ourselves, the judgments, the fears. Sometimes my own mind feels like there's 12 browser tabs open at once, and I can't even figure out which one is playing the music. Yet beneath all that, I believe there is something quieter, something steady, something that has never left us, a kind of music beneath the noise. I've been facilitating sound healing experiences for several years now, and one of the questions that I'm often asked is, which instrument heals the most? It's a crystal bowl, huh? But people are often surprised by my answer. I don't really believe it's the instruments. It's the bowls or the gongs, or even the crystal harp or the drum. They're beautiful, but I don't think they're the source of healing. I think that they simply help us tune into our natural rhythm and become quiet enough to notice what's already there, what's always been there. It's a little like cleaning a dusty window. The sunlight wasn't absent. The window simply became clear enough for the light to shine through. So healing isn't always about adding something new. It's about remembering what has always been true. In a sound bath, every instrument eventually becomes silent. Every sermon eventually ends. Every teacher eventually stops talking. But if we've truly listened, something continues vibrating inside of us. There's a quote often attributed to Rumi. We are just family, like everything said today. Like, I see why this is what came through. The quieter you become, the more you are able to hear. Whether or not those were his exact words, the wisdom certainly rings true. Jesus himself repeatedly withdrew into silence, not because he needed to escape life, but maybe because silence was where he remembered his deepest connection, Father, Mother, God. It's been shared with me that Unity Church teaches that the kingdom of heaven is within. I believe that too. And if that's true, perhaps our deepest spiritual work isn't collecting more wisdom. It's becoming quiet enough to recognize the wisdom already resonating within us. Books can inspire us, teachers can guide us, communities can encourage us, but eventually, every path invites us to the same place, the still, quiet space where the divine speaks directly to the heart. When I was 21 years old, I was called to serve as a missionary in Uruguay. Like many missionaries, I arrived full of faith and also carrying a tremendous sense of responsibility. There was just one problem. I didn't really speak Spanish. And even the Spanish I learned in school was not the Castellano that they speak in Uruguay. It's more Portuguese. So my senior companion could carry on beautiful conversations while I was trying to figure out words that I thought I recognized, but I definitely didn't, the way they were saying them. And at first I wondered, how can I possibly help anyone if I can't even communicate? I thought I needed better Spanish. Then I thought I needed stronger faith. And then I thought I needed more teaching skills. But slowly something entirely different was happening as I connected to Christ's presence. He wasn't asking me to become more. He was gently teaching me how to become less in the way. Because love didn't seem to come from me. It moved through me. The moment that I stopped trying so hard to manufacture it. So early in my mission, before I knew the language, when my companion spoke, I did the only thing I knew how to do. I silently loved the people sitting in front of me. Send them love. I would pray without words, almost like opening a window inside of myself. I imagined God's love flowing through me towards them and holding them, not from me, but through me. And something remarkable began to happen. I noticed that the love that was flowing through me with these intentions, it didn't change depending on who was sitting in front of me. It wasn't greater for someone who seemed to be doing everything right. It wasn't less for someone who was struggling. It didn't even seem to matter if they'd been baptized, or whether they believed what I believed, or whether they were living according to the standards that I'd been taught. It didn't matter. The love was always exactly the same. Unlimited, unconditional, steady, and available. It was one of the first times that I truly understood what it means that God shows no partiality. Love wasn't being earned, it was simply being received. And I began to notice something else, that often the most meaningful parts of the visits weren't about anything that I said. It was what happened in the space between the words. People would soften. They would begin sharing things that they hadn't planned to share. Sometimes they cried. Sometimes they laughed. Sometimes they simply became still. And I began to wonder, maybe people don't change because someone convinces them. Maybe they change because for a few moments, they feel completely safe to remember who they really are. There were also moments when I felt overwhelmed by the responsibility. I believed I had to teach everything correctly. I worried that someone's eternal future somehow depended on whether I found the exact right words said in the exact right way. And I was there to save everybody. That's a pretty heavy burden for a 21-year-old. So I prayed, not asking for better arguments, not asking for more eloquence, asking for Christ to be with me, to be present, asking for peace. And eventually I stopped talking long enough to listen. Eventually. And in that deep stillness, I did find Christ. And something arose in my heart that has never left me. It wasn't really words. It was more like knowing. And what that knowing spoke to me was, I sense that every soul belongs to God. Every soul has a path home. Nothing real is ever really lost. Divine love is infinitely patient. Each person is being guided according to a wisdom far greater than my understanding. And my role was never to carry another person's journey. My role was simply to love them enough that they might hear God's own inner guidance more clearly within themselves. And that realization has changed everything. It's guided me here. Instead of feeling responsible for changing people, I became available to love people. Instead of trying to be the answer, I trusted that God was already present within them. Perhaps all I needed to do was become transparent enough that God's love could remind them of what they already knew. That experience has stayed with me for the rest of my life. It shaped not only how I see spirituality, but how I see healing, relationships, parenting, friendship, even the work that I do today. It guided me to Reiki, energy healing, and to sound healing. Because presence isn't something that we bring, it's what remains after judgment leaves. When I judge you, I can't fully see you. When I'm trying to fix you, I can't fully be with you. When I'm trying to impress you, I can't fully love you. Presence appears when everything falls away. And I often wonder if that's what Jesus did so beautifully. He certainly taught. I mean, his words continue to inspire us thousands of years later. But even more than his words, people felt something in his presence. They felt seen, known, safe, loved. Perhaps that's why lives changed. Not because he argued people into transformation, but because divine love was so fully embodied in him that others remembered their own divine nature in his presence. There's a beautiful principle in physics that if you strike a tuning fork, another tuning fork, resonant to the same note, will begin vibrating too, even if you don't strike it. And then they'll both amplify. Not because it was forced, not because it was persuaded, not because someone explained resonance to it. And in science, we call this entrainment through sympathetic resonance. But because it vibrates because it recognizes its own frequency. And I sometimes wonder if love works that way. When we embody peace, compassion, acceptance, presence, we become the crystal bowls. We become tuning forks of the divine. We don't make another person whole. We remind them that beneath all the noise, they have always been whole. That's what sound baths do. They tune us back into our resonance. A tuning fork can't make another tuning fork something that it isn't. And if they're not resonant, they'll both fade. It simply awakens what is already there. Maybe that's what Christ was doing. Maybe that's what great teachers have always done. They don't place divinity inside us, they awaken our remembrance of it. Think about the people who have changed your life, all the people that we gave gratitude for today. Was it because they had all the right answers? Or was it because when you were with them, you somehow felt more like yourself, more accepted, more peaceful, more capable, more loved. Some people have that gift, but I don't believe it's reserved for a select few. I believe that every one of us can cultivate that kind of presence, because presence isn't something we perform, it's something we become. The song talked about us being a great symphony. I had a great orchestra. In an orchestra, the cello doesn't try to be the flute. The trumpet doesn't compete with the violin. It's not more important. Each instrument offers its own note. Harmony doesn't happen because every instrument sounds the same. That would be pretty boring. Harmony happens because each one faithfully expresses its own voice while deeply listening to every other. Right? And that's what makes it so beautiful, the symphony. So perhaps humanity was never meant to become identical. Perhaps we were created to become harmonious. And here's something else I love about music. The beauty isn't just in the notes. It's also in the silence between them. Without the pauses, music becomes noise. A long note. Without stillness, life becomes noise. So maybe prayer isn't about talking to God. Maybe it's becoming available to God. One of my favorite passages from the Way of Mastery that has some channeled messages from Jesus or Yeshua says, truth can't be taught, it can only be remembered. That sentence has stayed with me for years, because perhaps our deepest work isn't collecting more spiritual information, perhaps it's gently removing everything that has caused us to forget. The fear, the shame, the comparison, the belief that we are somehow separate from the love that created us. I learned something during those early years that continues to guide me today. Bigger than the teachings, bigger than the messages, was the stillness, the safety, and the reassurance of our assured pathway home that arose in my heart when I became quiet enough to listen. It felt like discovering the music beneath the noise, a harmony that has always been playing beneath every fear, every division, every certainty, a single note of love that has been quietly calling each of us home from the very beginning. Perhaps our greatest contribution to this world isn't convincing others of anything. Perhaps it's becoming people whose presence reminds others that they are already loved, already worthy, already connected, already held by something infinitely greater than fear. The world doesn't need more noise. It needs more people who carry peace, who embody compassion, more people willing to become instruments through which divine love can move, not because we've perfected ourselves, but because we've learned to listen. I've come to see Christ less as someone we're meant to only to admire, and more as someone who came to demonstrate what becomes possible when a human being becomes completely transparent to divine love. Christ didn't just come to tell us about God. He came to remind us who we truly are, and that love is not something we create. Love is what remains when everything unlike love falls away. I'd like to leave you with one final invitation. The next time you find yourself feeling overwhelmed or uncertain, or feeling like you need all the answers, pause. Take one slow breath. Become still. And ask yourself, what is the music beneath this moment? Listen. Because I have a feeling the song of God has never stopped singing. We've only forgotten from time to time how to hear it. Notice. The sound disappeared, but the listening remained. And perhaps that's what prayer is, not holding on to the sound, but becoming the listening itself. And maybe that's where Christ consciousness has always been waiting, not outside us, but beneath every fearful thought, beneath every judgment, beneath every identity we've built, quietly singing the same note he has sung from the very beginning. You are my beloved. May we become quiet enough, transparent enough, and loving enough that the world remembers its own song.
Thank you so very much. That was truly wonderful. And now if we can get a couple of ushers.